We've only got 2 months left. It's all right. Okay. Okay. So you had some trouble hearing me yesterday? Yeah. I forgot my other mic, but
it's because you had like two Scott Andersons up, and so then it was like echoing each other.
Okay. That's fine. I'll turn the other one off. There we go. 2 Scott Andersons. There. World only needs one, right?
Yeah, only needs
Does everybody have your textbook today?
Yes.
I'll make some references to it as we get going. Need a couple of seconds, minutes, hours, days. And I'll just make sure. Did you get one of these? For anybody that doesn't have an old beautiful perspicacious sky, America the Beautiful. Nope. Just in case.
Can I have one?
You do?
Yes.
Oh, you do?
I need one. I need one.
So, yeah. I'm just going to take care of this now, so I don't run around here again. And you may have seen, I swabbed off my hands before I did this. It's all sanitary. Seal of approval. If you were here in person on Tuesday, you already have this handout as well. Oops. You already have it. This is, for those of you that are just getting this, this is not what it says. It's in the chapter of rehearsal planning and techniques from this other textbook, but it has to do with the choral auditions. And we're going to talk about that a little bit.
Can I have one as well?
Sorry. We're here. Here.
As president.
There's an America the Beautiful on one of those desks, whatever one you take. This. I'm just going to take care of this too. Nobody has this yet.
Oh, hi.
Yeah, I'm going to even give you one out of
What? I feel so blessed.
And I do have another couple up there. Copies, because I thought I had a few more. If you're getting a copy as you are, I'm going to try to replace this with an actual copy ASAP.
Okay.
But for now, you'll be able to look look on. And so, just to kind of summarize from Tuesday's class, we discussed briefly, you know, because I know that the video, if you watched it, was maybe hard to hear. So I won't go through everything, but we know what we've been covering, warm-up, choral warm-up. And you might remember that we discussed very briefly some other kinds of activities that could be done, whether they be sight reading, other literacy things having to do with rhythm, and the manner in which we incorporate that into the warm-up really depends on the literature that we're doing with our kids. And things like even warm-up activities and or sight reading activities, rhythm activities can be inserted anywhere in the rehearsal process. I mean, it doesn't always have to be the beginning. If we have something that's specific to a particular piece, let's say we start with something really familiar with our students to start the day, maybe the second piece is brand new. And we might introduce a concept, whether it's projected on the screen, whether it's something that's in their folder, whatever, that they visually can make reference to, or if it's call and response, or whatever the activity is, that can be inserted in the middle of the rehearsal, or at the beginning of the rehearsal, or at the end of the rehearsal, depending upon what you've got, you know, how you've got your rehearsal plan. We'll talk a lot more about rehearsal programming and creating an environment in which there's a journey rather than a checklist, so that, you know, people feel involved and motivated from the beginning to the end. But that element we didn't really discuss, other than I made reference to it, and I had you do a couple of really quick activities with me. Remember when we did the clapping, and you tried to follow me, and I threw you off, and it was just kind of an enjoyable way to start. So anything from attention-getting activities to literacy activities to other kinds of literature-specific activities are those things that I'm talking about. Other things that are we're not just going to sing out of our music, kind of things that we do with our students. You got one chair, and it's a really good one. It's one of the best. And I put all of or most of the handouts on that. So we just began discussing the choral audition. And that's the next main concept that we're going to be discussing. And just, I'm going to be modeling for you, and probably with one or two of you in the room. And I'll take you through a mock audition. And hopefully, if everything works out, you'll be doing that as well. And meaning that you'll go through that kind of an activity so that you can have that experience. Again, there's a lot of information. You can review that video that is on the YouTube channel. And we discussed fairly thoroughly what are the reasons for, you know, what are the kinds of things that you want to do in an audition? What are the things that you have to think about as the instructor? What are the things when that student walks into your practice room, into your choir room, into the band room, wherever you're giving your warm-up, or wherever you're giving your audition, you know, all of the aspects. What does a student look like? How do they feel that day? Do they have a cold? Because you assess that when they walk in the door, right? And I was saying this on Tuesday, that when they come in, and we first engage that person, it's like, you know, whatever it is, you ask them a question, a social question, or, hey, where'd you come from? Maybe it's right after lunch. Hey, what was for lunch today? You'll get information. How do they sound? And I don't mean are they sick necessarily, but they might be. What does their voice sound like before they sing a note? Are they really a high, kind of siren-y voice? Somebody comes in and they talk down here, you probably know they're not going to be a tenor, right? You know, so it sets up our expectations. Likewise, if some guy comes in, he's talking up here, you know, he's probably not going to be a bass, etc. And that's the first wave of information. How do they walk? How do they carry themselves? When they stand up in front of you, their posture. What is their attitude towards the event? How do you, if they don't have, much, I was kind of joking the other day about, I'm really scared to be here. If they don't display that, that's information. If they do display that, that's information. So it's a lot more than just a factory of bringing people in. Okay, next, next, next. You have that 8 or 10 minutes to assess all of those things, because many of your students are going to be meeting for the first time, right? Every fall semester, you're going to have some new students. And if you do a graded choral program that you're responsible for either 6 through 12, 7 through 12, however the schools are split up, so that you have a middle school component and then you have the high school component, it's going to be rare that any of you on your first job are going to get a high school job in Boise or here in Pocatello following a 25-year teacher. Maybe, and that'll be a journey in and of itself if you follow a 25-year teacher. But assuming that you're going to do a potpourri of ages, that's the situation. You're going to have new students all the time. You're going to have some students that have never been in a music group before. You're going to have some students that came up from an elementary program that was really good. They may have one classroom teacher that is a musician. And you'll get a few kids that just they may already even know some basic solfege in the 6th grade or the 7th grade. But the vast majority of them won't be like that, right? So that's why I'm going through all of this. So why do I have to observe? Because that's how we observe anybody. Think about it. When you meet somebody new and you encounter them for the first time, you have a lot of signs about, their mannerisms, their personality, what is their everything. And so that's really important as a teacher to just pick that up, and not just once, not at the audition. Every day is the feeler. How is the baseline of that student different today? What's going on here? What's going on there? Because that's kind of our business, is checking in and seeing, okay, because I can expect some things from any of you on your baseline days, and there's going to be a little that goes off in my head if I see somebody in a different mood, or if I see somebody with a different body language that day. I mean, right? We're all human beings, and that's just a fact. You're likely to get a different response. They'll receive things differently on certain days than they do on their normal day, whatever that means. I'm just saying that is a huge part of what we do. So then and this is in the article that I just handed out to some degree, but we talked a little bit on Tuesday about how I might choose to order my warm-up or my audition. And I might start with that conversation, ask a few questions. They have filled out a form already for me. And however you choose to do that, sorry, my mask is, that's why I'm going like this. I'm fogging up, so I can't see you, but I'll just talk out here. So they'll fill out a form online maybe, and you'll get it right on your computer screen, or maybe it's a hard copy like that article suggests, and you have information, right? Depending upon the level that you teach, what's your previous experience? That's important. Maybe they'll let you know that they played another instrument. Maybe, if the address is important, you probably already have information on the middle school, high school level. But whatever information you deem is necessary. Here, we ask for t-shirt size, because we also, when we don't have COVID, we usually have a par t-shirt that particular year. And so that information then is collected at the beginning without having to ask. We maybe ask for cell phone or other contact material, and then we say, we're not going to release that. I just need it as the director. And then if there's such a social environment or social event, a tour or something where it would be conducive for you to release those to the students, you get their permission. And
And I think it's a little different at the public school level, but that's what has to happen here. So anyway, all that stuff is preamble to what you're there for, right? You're there to listen to them and to assess. So all the things I've talked about so far, it's like what running your program is going to be. There's going to be 6 million other things besides making music. And that's, that's like, oh, you're going to learn that. I can't possibly cover all that. Dr. Klaus cannot possibly cover all that. No, nobody can. So much of that, you're just going to kind of stumble through and go, wow, I didn't know I had to fill that out. Or, just to do this, we had to, reserve that bus 64 years in advance. And then, so there's just so many little things. So you finally get to the point where you're face to face with the student, and now you've done all that other stuff. You have their form, or it's online, or whatever it is, so you have some baseline information before you even start the warm-up, or before I say warm-up because you're essentially using the same kinds of tools. So every voice that you encounter, is going to be different. Everyone. It's like having a horn this big, or a horn this big, or a horn with one valve missing, or it's like, gee, how could there be so much variation in a baritone? Well, every single one of us has it. How do we recognize each other? One of the factors is through our voice. And so every one of us has a distinctive mechanism in pharynx and nasal passages and all of that. There's not any two of us that sound the same. Think about that. And so that translates into the singing voice, obviously. And so the issues are I think, self-explanatory. So I want us to start using this system. And what this is labeling pitches according to the octaves on the piano. So middle C, how many of you are not familiar with this system? Oh, really? So I'm already speaking to the choir? Everybody, do they use this in theory? Oh, so my big presentation is unnecessary. So everybody knows middle C is C4. And then everything above that within the octave is a 4. And until you get to the C5, and so on and so forth. Okay, great. Because that's how you're going to evaluate on the form that I give you for the choral music analysis. So if you say, well, the bottom note that the baritone sing is a C3, we'll all know what we're talking about. Because and we'll get to this in just a minute, because this is not going to be on the new form. And what I mean is, this says range and tessitura, and there's going to be one staff above for range and one staff below for tessitura. So instead of drawing in the note, you're going to have something to fill in for the bottom note, and then you'll put, say, C3, and then you'll put C2, or whatever the highest note is in the piece. And that, I just wanted to make sure that everybody was comfortable with that system before we get to this analysis sheet. So, thinking of that, you're almost, I've drawn the extremes of the range that you're going to encounter in high school. Okay, this isn't middle school. Well, after most of the guys' voices have changed to whatever they are going to sound like for a few years there, and most of the women are in some sort of different position than they were before adolescence. So the basses, most basses, and I was joking before about low Cs, that actually occurs a little earlier than high school, maybe, or up to the sophomore year, especially for those boys that drop down. So if you have an E2, that is usually about the bottom, E to E flat 2. Some of the guys have a D or a C or a D. And then above this A, it gets pretty airy for the young women. Now you will encounter some very mature voices. Sometimes they'll appear in the 7th or 8th grade. And because the gals tend to mature a little bit earlier, you might have one in your choir, a 27. Woo! And she sticks out like Saturn on the earth. really, I mean, there might be one person that has, are you 40? 40 years old. And the rest of the gals are, that's difficult for that young woman to sing. Now I exaggerated the breastplates and horn thing. But were any of you in that situation? Did you have a more mature voice than some of your peers? You did. So you sang high, had vibrato probably. And that's kind of a weird sensation, isn't it?
Well, it was really hard because everybody else didn't sound like me. And so I had to figure out a way that I could sound like everybody else.
Did that make you feel like you had to compromise the way you sang?
Only because I didn't have the knowledge of good technique to be able
Right.
to sound like everybody else.
But you definitely sounded different than some of the other people. How about you, Michaela? You didn't? Yeah? Yeah. And the reason I'm asking these people is because if you haven't heard them, they have rather dramatic, full kinds of voices. And often it's that voice that matures earlier, and they have vibrato, and most kids that age, with a little wiggle, and it's from nerves. It's not from natural oscillation. And so if a young gal, then you're singing with Aunt Tilly. And really, it's like that age group is, the rest of them are like, I don't even know what the birds and the bees are, and she sounds like that. So anyway, the kind of voices that we're going to be getting are going to be kind of in a narrower range for the gals and a narrower range for the guys. The majority. So that's why this bell-shaped curve is important, and meaning that if 79% of all people kind of fit in a general range with their voices after they matured a bit, that's why that middle C is kind of important. Because above it, a fifth is going to be a reasonable range for most people. And now I'm talking high school. So that's why I'm asking you to kind of place where that is. Where's C4, where's C3, so that you can just go there. In the audition, then, if we ask people to sing a pattern or a scale, we're going to have to give them everything, meaning what vowel to sing on, in other words, I wouldn't go up to the piano with a kid who's standing here and go, let's say it's a girl, sing this. They don't know what to sing. So we're going to have to sing on ah, or sing on E, or model. I'd like you to begin here. Can you do that? And then maybe you play with them a little bit. So the modeling, the pitch, and how to do it all has to happen. Excuse me. If you want a particular intervallic exercise, so that's important, and that's even true on this level. If I fail to give some of that information, instead of them standing there silly, they'll ask me, well, what would you like me to sing about? So they're not going to ask you that. They're just going to make a mistake. And the idea is to try to give them a pathway so that they don't make a mistake, or that they don't think they are. It's not that they can't make a mistake. It's just that as soon as they think that they don't know what to do, and they're reluctant to sing anyway. So create a situation where for a while maybe you're singing along with them a little bit, and then you're maybe playing the piano, or a combination of the two, and then you take things away. Do you remember seeing that on the video, or when we talked about that on Tuesday? Is that I might, and I'd play 5, 3, 1, and then the next time I'd go 3, 1, I wouldn't play the fifth, or I might not play the third or something, just so I could start to hear them and see if they can sing a tune, if they can tonicize whatever it is, even hearing a half step, and then what kind of tone quality they sing. So here's another thing. Could you sing that on ah, and then they'll go ah. So the manner of articulation. If we want them to sing legato and sustain, we have to model legato and sustain. If we want them to sing like the piano plays, if you sing that on ah, I can guarantee you that's how they'll sing it. Or they'll try to sing it. So if you can think about, okay, what are the parameters that I can possibly think of? We want to try to cover all those things so that they have the answers before they start. And modeling is the surefire way to remove a lot of that. So, oh, they hear that it's legato, and then they're 99% of the time going to do what you ask them to do. So while they're singing, what do you think? Let's get some responses from some of you. What do you think you're listening for when they are starting to sing? Just anything is probably something to listen for. Everybody, yeah.
Tone quality.
Tone quality.
Ease of sound production.
Ease of sound production.
I was gonna say muscle tension.
Muscle tension. What else? From a non-answerer person.
How comfortable they are in the range of playing.
Yep, that's a biggie. What else? Think about it. I mean, some of the questions you don't even have to. Yeah.
If they can match pitch.
If they can match pitch. Yeah, and if how comfortable they are, if they can match pitch. Those are really the first questions we're kind of thinking about. For me, if I were on the middle school level, vocal production would be, not that I don't care about it, but that's what they're there for. They're there to learn basic vocal production. So you're really not going to be able to expect too much on that level. It's like pitch. Can they match it? Do they have a sense of it? Somebody said vocal tone quality, right? Yeah, vocal tone quality. And what in the orchestra is a common, like if they have this kind of sound or if they have this kind of a sound, you probably use the term, that's a reedy sound. That is a fluty sound. Those kind of instrumental, that kind of instrumental language are the same things I write down on my evaluation sheet. Fluty voice. Elements of reedy voice in that, or there's a brassy quality. Because I know what that means. I'm not saying those are the technical terms you have to use. I'm just saying everyone in this room has a language of color that you use that can be transferred into the vocal arena. And they do transfer. Because choral directors all across the country, the world, they say, well, I really like my altos to have a more reedy sound. I love it when the tenors sound like, French horns up there. Or so. There's often that kind of usage. So anything that gets at, because those are your instruments for the choir, right? Later we'll talk about matching reeds and flutes in your, I'm being serious, not the literal instruments, but the voice color in your choral setting. I think about that all the time. Oh, that's kind of a reedy voice. I would have put them next to a fluty voice so that it kind of blends that in a certain style. So those are the kinds of things we're listening for right out of the gates. What other? Okay, so pitch. Yeah, that's the general thing. Maybe somebody said this already, but what's the more specific thing about pitch that you're listening for in that exercise?
Tuning.
Yeah, tuning and interval, right? So it's also something that you might choose to do, depending, let's say it's for high school mixed select group, okay? And they've had experience with you in your program for 2 or 3 years, and they're auditioning, and you say, okay, every other triad is going to be major, and the other ones are going to be minor. mean, there's other things you can throw into the mix, or even saying, could you go up a half step with a major or with a minor triad? You don't have to change it. That's really hard. But if you just went la da da la da da, just finding that next minor third is kind of a tricky ear thing. Maybe not for an instrumentalist, but it is for a vocalist, especially in a descending pattern, where they're having to not only think about the key change, but then what is the modality of it. So all of those things, there's lots of assessment that's going on. What are some other things that you can be assessing besides the sound while this is happening? Besides the sound.
Posture. Posture.
Yeah, posture, absolutely.
Breath control.
Breath control,
How confident they are.
how confident they are, how unconfident, other stuff.
You could maybe hear, even if they don't have vibrato yet, if there's an onset of maybe some vibrato.
Yeah, that's a really good thing. That's a really good comment. So, do they have what we were just talking about naturally? I mean, do they use vibrato? Is there vibrato present? Then we get into things like, is there airiness in the tone? Is it a pure sound? Is it kind of like in the center of the pitch? Or is it kind of, what are some of the stylistic things that all younger kids are growing up with in their popular music? And in that style, it's perfectly appropriate. But it may cause some confusion about their own vocalism. What is that? What are some things from the popular culture?
Pop music tends to be a little bit on the airier side
Yeah.
of singing.
Area, so does jazz a little bit. What else? Just about onset of pitch is what I'm thinking of.
It sometimes approximate, or you can kind of like.
Yeah. There could be a variation stylistically depending on the style. I don't know. I sound like a 50s crooner, but that element is part of the expressive style of some popular styles or other styles, jazz, improvisatory styles. So that's what they're listening to. Whether it's top 40 or whether it's something that's not that genre, maybe it's more world music styles, maybe it's whatever the case. Any folk-oriented, rock-oriented, pop-oriented, jazz-oriented is going to be different than probably the basic phonation that we're going to be teaching. Listen for that. Because why? Because to tune up an ensemble, you can't have that happen in the real world, right? I mean, you can have it happen, but unless everybody's tuning exactly from the same direction and to the same pitch, it doesn't tune. And so that's one of the main causes of, public school choir flacking is scooping, portamento, is the constant under the pitch. So, yeah, all of these things are what's great to assess. And then you have to decide, the educator has to decide, how much am I going to force on these students? And what I mean by that is, if they're really having a hard time with the experience, what are some things that we can do to mitigate some of the hyper nervousness? Well, one of those things is what I just said, not in the way that it's used, but sliding from pitch to pitch. So if you're just having a student who's really, really nervous, then they just repeat after me. Ah, they do the kind of like a oh. We get them to use their voices in inflection up and down. That is the first step to pitch. And you're going to have some kids that have major pitch matching problems in every choir you teach. And that's one step to getting them to improve that into their own awareness is, ah, ah, you, you can see how that could lead to pitch. In just a normal expressive thing that we all do when we, no, really? Yeah. So if we can make it as normal as possible for them and start to get them towards the singing, that's something that can help. Other tools to be thinking about, and this is going to crop up for the rest of the semester for us because we're going to be using vocal techniques to deal with the choir. The most pure kind of phonation for any one of us is humming. So if just everybody on this pitch in your own range, I'd like you to just go on and close your lips and say. Now the M is kind of cool because you have a built-in chamber in there, and so it you can feel a lot of vibration in your lips and under the nose. So try that again with me. Yeah. Now let's separate the lips and we'll use an N like Nancy. And use the same pitch on. Do you feel that there's less tension here? Because your lips aren't together, obviously. But also, the less that the lips have to come together, the less your students and you are going to feel any tension here. It's just open, free. Do a sigh like that on an N. Do the same thing with your lips together and go. Yeah, the higher I go, I feel a little bit of strain starting to develop in here. Do you feel a little bit of that? So you can remove that to some degree with that N. Still a hum, still getting the sound in there. Now let's do the NG. Say ding dong and hold that Ding dong. So you leave the bell part of that out. You go right to the And if we sing do that. Because you've got the eustachian tubes where they come in to the throat, you're shutting them off. It sends all of the sound onto the palate, and it rings the throat. Do you feel that? Say that again. Yeah. So with an M or an N, you can leave the eustachian tubes open, or the little openings in the back of the soft palate, but you can't with So if I sing, what I can feel is both my throat, the back of the throat, what we call the pharynx, remember those drawings, it's the back of the mouth, and up into the back of what is the beginning of the sinus cavities. So try that again, sing. You feel all that space kind of ringing in there differently. So I'd like to start like this. We're going to go M, like this. Like you feel the difference, okay? Here we go, starting with M. Feel how open that is. And some of the sound immediately goes back as soon as you go to the sound. Why am I saying all this? Because if somebody comes in with really foggy, froggy voice, somebody comes in with air, that's the only way that you're going to be able to eliminate the air if there's not something wrong with them. If they still can't sing through that without lots of air, you probably shouldn't have them sing that day. Or you can at least assess that, you have a cold? You had some drainage and stuff happening and whatever. But that is a real diagnostic for you, for me. I've used it all my career and I will continue to use it just because of the physiological fact that you can get the folds to come together and vibrate the most efficient way. That's not me saying that, that's just science. So everything else creates a larger glottal opening. Glottis is the space between the two vocal folds. And it just creates, when I, the opening is much larger between them. When I go, I can almost make the inside membranes vibrate. Just a little bit larger space. This is incredibly exhilarating information. So all of these assessment tools, it doesn't matter if you are presently a cornucopia major or a voice major. You can use these assessment tools and your ear. See, that's the best asset of any teacher of music is our ears, is listening and assessing. It's the same thing. If you hear really airy sound, scratchy sound from a violinist, you know they're not getting a very efficient bowing done on that string. If you hear, I'm sure Haley, there are similar sorts of airiness where the embouchure or the double reed is not there, it's just not working well. There's not a good hookup. It's the same concepts. Whatever the vibrator is just not hooked up. So all of this stuff is so important in every day of your choral job. And so it's not like, I'm using it in the warm-up when I warm up the choir, and I'm using it only in the assessment at the audition. No, it's the same stuff all the time. So everything we're discussing about the audition concept is what you're going to be doing or listening for similarly. So we do vocalizing up and we do vocalizing down. And we assess the range. And the range is going to be approximately on that day. It's a snapshot, right? Some days I can sing a lot higher, and some days I can sing a lot lower, and every one of you is the same way. But on that particular day, you're getting a snapshot of about where that person's within probably 2 or 3 notes. And I'm saying 2 or 3 notes, that's a lot. Because if they have any sort of congestion or anything, you're going to be limited. So let's say that the highest note the soprano sings is an E. And the lowest note that the soprano can sing is middle C, C4. Those are the notes that I would be writing. I would write C4 and E5 on the high part as the range. But then I would probably put a little flat note. These flat notes are here just because they're C's. But let's say I hear that place. If it happens more than once or twice, I'm gonna color that in and say, she's got a little lift up there. And that note is probably a transition or a little break. How am I supposed to know that? You can hear. With the guy. There's no question. It's a totally different function of the vocal fold. Below that, all the vocal cord is vibrating. Above that, it's stiff, and it's like when you whistle through a blade of grass. There's no vibration in the fold. You've got to mark that down so that you know that note's going to change every couple months for that boy and that girl. So anyway, why is that all important? Because of this sheet. Because you're going to have those singers that are going, sing your literature. And if they can't participate in the literature, in a written part, we're going to have to find out a way that they can't participate. And then where that's going to lead is moving them around in sections. So the idea of girls being altos for 3 years is just false. The girls are going to have to sing where they can sing. And some teachers will flip certain members of their choir around so that, okay, this semester you're going to sing alto 1 or alto, and next semester you're going to sing soprano. And a similar thing with the boys. Those that can. Difference with the boys is you're going to have ranges that are this big. That's it. You think I'm joking, but there are 4 and 5 note ranges that some of these boys will have during the musician. So I guess what today is about is a revelation, maybe not. I don't know what you're expecting, but how much has to be considered in working with these instruments, even when you audition them. And it's not information that's inaccessible to somebody that doesn't have a vocal degree. It's using your ears and then keeping track of it so that you go into a situation where you teach in a public school and you think, change is my word. Change is what I do. I am the Lord of change. And that's a silly way to say that we have no choice over it. The instrument that you use is going to be in flux all the time. And, part of your duty is to take care of it and to help them be able to participate. So another day, another lecture, yeah.
Have you ever encountered a student where you felt as though they just would not be able to sing in choir?
I have a few of those now. No. That was a setup for me to say that. Yes.
Do you recommend maybe instruments are your thing?
No, because instruments weren't their thing. They just didn't have the skills, and maybe they had, because I didn't know at the time. I'm thinking of one particular student, and he sang in choir, and I put up with it. I mean, really, because you're going to have classes where you figure out a way that that student can participate and not completely disrupt the rest of the students, because that's an issue. But this kid was almost atonal in terms of his ability, and so placing him around different places. I tried to sing next to a stronger singer thing, that didn't work, and it just made the stronger singer mad. And anyway, that's a long story. But I do have a story. Okay, so what I'd like to do is I'm going to start sending you things, and those things are going to include videos, so that we can you can start some assessments of things like rehearsals. I didn't get to it again, but I think what we talked about will all relate directly to the music evaluation sheet. I'll be sure to do that on Tuesday with you. I'll probably start with it. And we'll go through, that's why I passed out America the Beautiful. And we're going to go through that sheet with that piece, and we'll assess it. And we'll write the C whatever to A whatever on the ranges. We'll do tessitura for America the Beautiful in all 4 parts, so that you know exactly what I'm looking for in all the other music. And we'll discuss how to answer those other issues. Because if it says, harmonic, whatever, melody, I'm not looking for you to do a harmonic analysis of every piece. Well, from page 4 stays in the tonic, and then we go to the subdominant, and there's a sort of false modulation. Not that. It's the idea of what is the general way that the piece is put together. Form, is it a good old ABA form? Is it a strophic form? Because that helps you decide how you're going to teach the piece. So we'll discuss all of that. And then the Shoshone love song, I'd like to use that to start discussing about how to prepare a piece for rehearsal. and then how we might present the piece on a first reading, on a second reading, and so on and so forth, so that it's not just, okay, let's go rehearse this. How do you start? What are some ideas? With or without a piano? And so that's where we're going and why I've given you all of this stuff. I'm hoping that we will cover a lot more ground a lot more quickly in the next couple of weeks. And so that you'll see all the connections, yeah.
For those who do not yet have that form for analyzing stuff, maybe we have those.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this is not the ultimate form, but it's the one we use in class. So everybody has American the Beautiful, right? If you don't have this choral music analysis sheet, if you don't have it, please stay, and rest of you, I'll see you next week. Okay? Did I give you one?
What is the range of boys before their voice changes? Is it like all treble clef or?
I wish there was one answer.
Or just like what to expect from middle school age?
Yeah. All the boys using either alpha or support.
Really?
Until they're getting a little bit older, then some of them start to get a little bit lower than alpha. But we don't have to
Okay. But so then middle school, you could probably, like if the boys you haven't changed, pick like essay piece, like a 2-part.
yeah, like, I mean, like we have to because we have kids everywhere from 6th grade through 8th grade. You know, that's a huge range of ages. We have to make it applicable and workable for all the students.
Yeah.
By the time especially the boys get to the 8th grade, like they really do but like, and again, they're already fluctuating around. But like, yeah, I think the middle one proto basis where the is
Yeah.
just pretty comfortable in alto or
Okay.
I remember in 8th grade, I got to help the altos sometimes. I was in the quote-unquote bass section, but I got to help the altos because I could sing, and they needed a little help on one of the pieces. So
Good job.
she just had me stand in the back row of the altos for that one song. And then switch back over. But
Well, aren't we having a recording?
Well, she has, get to the point where you can get with
Ooh, not for water.
semi-phone. But I mean, he never appreciated that. So it was kind of a directional thing. He got to be, and it was just, you heard him moan in the back of the room. That's what we had to deal with. Now,